Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to my channel. So I woke up this morning and I really wanted to film a video sharing this story with you guys of how I found my sweet little apartment in Paris that I'm so grateful for every day, and that's really been a key part of my journey in creating a new life in Paris. So for me, this story is really special and beautiful because it's been a lesson in keeping the faith and really letting go of limiting beliefs, because I truly believe that we have the power to attract things into our lives that we desire, even if on paper it might seem impossible or we have no idea how things are going to work out in the end, you know? Because I really believe that this story and kind of my experience attests that it can actually work out. So I hope that I can give you guys a little bit of hope if you're also looking for a place. And I'm also going to be sprinkling in little insider tips, like, you know, how much you can expect to pay in rent in Paris. Also, you know, like what you need in your application file, what websites I use, so hopefully I can help you as well. So let's get into it. So I think I should begin with a little backstory. I think that most of you guys know by now that I've lived in Paris for the last 6 years, but I began to look for a new place in November because of a separation. That old place that we shared together, Alex had actually found through a work friend. So I never really had the experience before of apartment hunting up until now. So all of that process was completely new to me. And I mentioned this a little bit in my previous video, but I decided to leave him the apartment because A, he really liked the place, and B, I wasn't really crazy about it or the neighborhood. And C, I wanted a fresh start, you know, like all of those memories of living together, etc. So I decided that I was going to be the one to look for a new place, even though, you know, on paper, this was a really big risk for me, because even though I am able to pay rent alone, you know, I have a full-time job, my kind of situation isn't seen as solid by landlords in France because I am freelance, so I don't have a work contract. And also I don't have a French co-signer, which is the most important thing. But something I learned is to always follow my intuition, and even though I wasn't sure how I was going to manage this move, I felt strangely at peace because I knew that from like past experiences of trusting and keeping the faith that it's not my job to figure out how things are going to work out. My job is to just become as specific as possible about what I'm looking for and to just let it go. So that's what I did. I wrote out in my journal as a first step what I was looking for in a place, like what neighborhood and everything. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some of the things that I wrote on my list that I was looking for in a place. So I think it's important to be as specific as possible, and I really would recommend doing this because from the moment that you write down your dream reality, even if it doesn't already exist physically, it already exists in your mind. you know? And so having that already exist there, I think makes it even more possible for it to exist in the real world, you know? So I wrote bright and cozy, very important. I really love having natural light. I also wrote charming features. Like I really love old Osmanian buildings. Those are buildings like the ones I'm showing you here. Very like kind of old classic Parisian charm. I also liked features like a fireplace, you know, kind of built-in crown molding, that kind of stuff that gives it a lot of soul, you know. I also wanted a place that was quiet. Oh my god, this was really important to me because obviously I film, but another thing is like my neighbors in my old apartment, they were batshit crazy. Like they would be fighting all of the time, or just like, I don't know, like there was always some sort of like dilemma or ruckus, you know. I also wrote a place that is in my budget, which is super important. I'll talk about like what you can expect to pay for like different size apartments in Paris like later in the video, but I knew that I wanted to stay under 800 euro a month because not only would I have like my studio, but I'm also going to be renting out my own art studio, and that's an additional like 300 to 400 euro a month. So, you know, it kind of adds up. But I actually prefer living in a smaller studio that is more central than to live like in a bigger place in the suburbs. So I didn't mind if it's a small space because I knew that I could actually, you know, like my art studio is another sort of living space. After this, I wrote in a neighborhood that I feel good in, that I really like. Honestly, I think that the neighborhood is one of the most important parts because the neighborhood that you live in is going to be where you end up spending most of your time. Like it's where you're gonna go grocery shopping, it's where you're gonna go to the post office, you know? So to really feel good in like that 10-minute radius around where you live is super important. And the last thing that I was looking for in a place is some place that has really amazing energy, you know, because I really believe that places carry a certain soul, a certain, you know, there's, especially like in an old place, like an old city like Paris, there's been like probably, I don't even know how many people have lived in this apartment, you know, there's so many stories and lives that have been lived, and I think that every place kind of carries an energy. So I wanted to feel like it could be a place that I feel good in, that's healing, especially because, you know, everything that I was going through, etc. Okay, so this is the part of the story where we start to see a few bumps in the road. So once I got specific about what I wanted, I knew exactly what I was looking for. I started looking on different websites like Busuu. And this is a website more dedicated to agencies. And at first, I thought I wanted to go through an agency because I was like, it's more legit. You know, I don't have to worry about getting screwed over. Because, you know, in big cities, there are a lot of like scams that you have to be careful of, you know? Which I'll talk about later in the vid. However, I started calling these places, you know, I would see the most beautiful listings like in my budget, and I would call, and you know, within the space of like talking to me of 5 minutes, they'd be like, oh, but you know, it's not even an option because you don't have a French cosigner. So even though I was earning enough money to pay rent, even though I had lived in France for 6 years and I could show that I really do have like a life here, I go to school, I have friends, like everything, unless you have that French cosigner, it's not even possible. So I started doing a little research because I was like, okay, I'm like the queen of loopholes. I always find a way, you know, like I always try to find an alternative way to, whether that's alternative travel, like it's just really important to not just take no for an answer, but try to find out what you can do to make your situation work, you know? There's this really amazing saying that I love, and it's pray to catch the bus and then start running. It's like, you know, have faith and believe in the law of attraction and the power of prayer, etc. But also do everything in your power to kind of make sure that you come out on top, you know? So I started doing research online, like what could I do because I don't have this fucking French cosigner, you know? And I actually stumbled on this service that the government offers called Visel. And actually, if you're under 30 and you are a student or a young professional, they will act as your co-signer up to 800 euros. And because I actually work on top of you know, being a student, I work full-time, and I showed them pay stubs and stuff, they actually upped my rent limit to 1,200 euro. But as I said, I didn't really need that because I wanted to stay under 800 euro anyway. But yeah, that was super nice. And surprisingly, especially for in France, you know, it's notorious for things taking a really long time. That whole process took me a day. And what they actually do is once you're approved, you just send like your student card, like your pay stubs if you want like that extra bit of money. Once you're approved, they send you that form like in the space of a day or 2 days. You just print it out and you show that to landlords, and the government will act as your co-signer, which is amazing, except a lot of, actually all agencies that I talk to don't accept it because they really want like an actual person to be your co-signer, like a parent or a friend or a family member, and they just want things to be like the old-fashioned way. So I realized that the best option for me was to stop looking at agencies because they really do want that perfect profile, and to instead look at websites that have like listings by private owner that, you know, they're not going through an agency to rent out their place, you know? So I started doing that. I started looking on sites like pap.fr or Le Bon Coin, which is kind of like French Craigslist, you know? One thing that's important to note is these rental websites are in French, which for me was fine because I'm fluent. But, you know, if you are a foreigner coming to France and you don't really understand, you know, how the website works, etc., it can be a bit challenging. And having said that, there are platforms aimed at foreigners, like English speakers, where you can find apartments, but honestly, I would advise against them because the rent that they just take advantage of the fact that you're a foreigner and you are having a hard time understanding the French websites. Like the rent that they offer is like 3 times what you would normally pay. For example, you know, I have a friend, she lives in a 1-bedroom, it's really nice, it's spacious. She pays like 850 a month, and a place like that on these websites would be like easily like 1,800 to 2,000, which is like totally ridiculous. And that's another reason I really get so annoyed when I watch House Hunters, like House Hunters International in Paris, because as much as I love Adrienne's personality, the places that she shows them are so overpriced. Like in Paris, I'll go over the prices that you can expect to find later on because it's truly important to know like if you're overpaying or not, you know, but yeah, just keep that in mind that those are available to you, but try and go like the traditional route because otherwise you're gonna be paying the extra money, baby. So before we dive into the rest of the video and the story, I want to take a quick minute to thank today's video sponsor, which is Busuu. Busuu is an online learning service that teaches the world's most popular languages, including Spanish, French, German, and English, just to name a few. They offer personalized study plans for any level and was voted best language learning app in 2020. The app is extremely user-friendly, so you can learn on the go, and offers over 3,000 lessons like online quizzes and live lessons with native speakers around real-life situations, for example, vocabulary for going to the market, or even apartment hunting, which will definitely come in handy if you guys decide to move abroad like me. The best part is Busuu is accessible to everyone. You can sign up for the free version or choose to get a premium account with additional features. So if you guys want to improve your language skills, you can check them out by clicking on the link down below. But without further ado, let's get back to the video. So, meanwhile, on my apartment search, I was writing landlords and looking every day, and oftentimes either they wouldn't write me back or the place would just go super quickly. But all the while, you know, this could be discouraging. I kept writing in my journal every day as an affirmation, thank you so much for my new apartment that I just love so much. And I would just write that every day. And it would make me feel really good. And even out loud sometimes I would just be like walking down the street and I'd be like, oh my god, finding an apartment in Paris is so easy. I can't believe it. Like if I was talking to somebody, I'd be like, oh hey, how are you? Finding an apartment in Paris is so easy, isn't it? Oh my god, I can't even, you know, because truly the words that we speak form our reality, you know, because subconsciously, whether we realize it or not, our brain is always trying to match our realities to our belief system. So for example, if you say, oh man, I really suck at sports, you're gonna suck at sports even if maybe you had potential, because you're always, you know, kind of creating that sort of limiting belief on yourself, you know? So people always talk about how difficult it is to find an apartment, but I just kept telling myself, it's not difficult for me. It's so easy to find an apartment in Paris, which is kind of funny, and it just brought me a little sense of humor out of the situation. But also, like, this is why placebos work. You know, and people who are sick, if you tell them that this is going to make them better, then it will. And I think it's the same with anything in our life, you know. So even if you guys aren't looking for an apartment, I think that that could be a lesson that could help you, is to always speak the reality that you want to exist. Yeah. So one night on a Friday, I was gonna have like a night in, you know, like I was watching a movie and I had bought like a bottle of wine, some snacks, and I was like 2 glasses deep in some Cabernet, and I was just like browsing kind of casually, and I came across this listing. I could tell by the photos, there was only a couple photos, but I could tell that it just had like a really good sort of energy. It was very bright, you know, it looked really charming, you know, and the most important thing was it was in a neighborhood that I really, really liked, and it was just posted. So I was like, fuck, like, you know, I gotta write really quick. So I went ahead and I wrote an email, and much to my surprise, I got a response almost immediately. And when I read the response, I was kind of taken aback because the landlord, like, I recognized her name. She is actually a really famous French author, and I had never read her books, but I had definitely heard of her books, and I had heard of her. She won like the Prix Goncourt, which is like a really, you know, prestigious award here in France, and she actually wrote a book on one of my favorite artists. So I was like, oh, okay. So I wrote back that I was really interested because honestly I had found that it's hard to find like a nice studio that's in your budget, and this was actually under my budget. And like I said, I love the neighborhood. So I wrote back and made sure to write back with my website and say that I was an art student, because I figured, you know, as she's also a writer and she, you know, she wrote a book on a famous artist that I love, that maybe she would be more open to somebody with an atypical profile like myself, because she also is an artist, and she probably, you know, when she was younger, she had to go through the same thing. So she wrote back that my application looked good, and I was like, yes, finally, somebody that accepts my, you know, Vicel, like my government co-signer, and that I could visit the place. And she gave me the number of her tenant because she was out of the country, but she was organizing visits through the person that was currently living this space. So I kind of immediately called the person because I was like, okay, you have to act fast, you know. So I called him and he was like, you know, can you come in like 30 minutes? And at first I was like, can we do it another day? You know, I was in my pajamas thinking I'm staying in for the night. I was 2 glasses deep in, you know, some wine, a little tipsy. So I was like, dang, this might not be the best time to go visit right now, you know? But he told me, he's like, oh, because if you don't come tonight, then, you know, I won't be able to do visits until next week. And there's like a bunch of other people that are gonna come next week. And I was like, I'll be there. I'll see you in 30. And I like hung up the phone and I just put like this big coat over my pajamas. And I was like, I guess we're going to go visit this apartment. And I was kind of laughing because I was like, oh my god, I'm a little bit drunk, like, ugh. And so I met him outside of the place, and immediately I was like, oh, it's a Haussmannian building. It's that old kind of like beautiful style building that I love in Paris. I also noticed that my favorite park in Paris was right down the street. So I was like, oh my god, if I got this place, that would be so amazing. But as I met the tenant, I kept thinking to myself, I hope he doesn't realize that I'm a little bit tipsy, because I want him to like me so that he tells, you know, the landlord that she should pick me, and that, you know, if he thinks I'm a little bit drunk, he might, you know. Anyway, but yeah, I was really excited. And then the next thing that really excited me is that there was an elevator, and I'm so used to dragging my ass up flights of stairs in Paris, and like all of the apartments I ever had from like when I was 19 and an au pair, you know, even my last apartment, there was no elevator. So I was like, oh my god, an elevator, super exciting. And then when he opened the door to this place, I was like, yep, this is my apartment. This is the one. It was so bright and charming. Like, it has all of these kind of old Parisian features, like the built-in fireplace. It has like a built-in bookshelf, and even though it is a small studio like I was looking for, it's really well kind of set up and organized. And as I was kind of looking around, I noticed that out the window there was this really gorgeous view of the Eiffel Tower, and that wasn't even something that I had written on my list or something that I thought was even possible, because I just thought that living in a place with an Eiffel Tower view would be just so expensive. But it's really like the cherry on top, and I get to watch it sparkle every night, and I just feel so blessed and grateful to just have this little reminder all the time that I kind of am living this beautiful life, you know. So during the visit, I also learned that the place came furnished, which can be a good thing or not, depending if you like the taste of the person that picked out the furniture. But I actually really like the furniture that was already here, like the desk. It's a really nice desk. The tables, the chairs. So that was kind of an added bonus as well, because I really thought that I was gonna have to buy all of those things. So that's something to consider as well when you're looking for a place, is if you want to find it furnished or not. Because if you're here for like a year, you probably want something furnished so you don't have to buy everything, and it really is a big money saver. But also, if you're somebody that wants to kind of like pick everything out yourself, then maybe you want to look for something unfurnished. And typically unfurnished is a little less expensive, but this place was actually under my budget by like 200 euros. It's a studio, it's 600 a month, and in this area it's a really good deal, I find, especially because it's really cute and charming and exactly what I was looking for. I would say that's pretty standard for a studio, is between like 500 and 600 a month. And because it was under my budget, I'm able to put all of that kind of extra money towards my art studio, because like I said, I'm going to be renting out my art studio in a few months because I'm finishing my MFA. So yeah, like all of these things considered, it was just exactly what I was looking for. And more importantly, like than anything else, when I walked in, I just felt like such a good energy and such a healing energy. And like I said, I think that's something that you can't really invent. I think that's something that just comes with the place, with it's a bunch of different factors together. And I just knew that this was a place that I could create in and really heal in after everything that I had been going through, you know. But having said that, I still had to convince the landlord to give it to me, because, you know, as many of us learn in life when we're looking for a place in a big city or just anywhere in general, you know, oftentimes we can get our heart broken when we fall in love with a place and there's like so much competition and stuff. So when I told him, I was like, I really want the place, he was like, okay, well, if you really want it, you should tell her like right away, because there's other people that want to visit it and stuff. So I wrote her a message like as soon as I left, like as I was going down the stairs. I was like, I visited your apartment, I find it so beautiful, I love the energies here, like I would love to be your next tenant. you know, and I was just like, boom, like, I want to be your next tenant, choose me. So the next day we did this FaceTime call. She was super lovely, and we just kind of talked like about how I was an artist, you know, about how she had written this book. She told me what she was really looking for in a tenant is somebody that really loves the place and feels good in the place. And I was like, me, that's me, pick me, you know? So after just like talking for a little bit and just getting to know each other, she was like, well, I'm happy to offer you the place if you want it. And I was just like, oh, so happy and overjoyed, and just like, it just felt so right, you know, and so seamless, just as I had asked it to be, and just how I kept expecting it to be, you know. So even though at the beginning of my apartment search, I kept hearing how hard it was to find a place, especially somebody in my situation, and I kept kind of getting closed doors, it was kind of all meant to be, because it led me to the place that I am now, and I'm so happy here, and it's like my little sanctuary, and I couldn't love the neighborhood more, and I just feel so grateful and blessed every day to wake up and be able to pass the next chapter of my life here. So I wanted to share that story with you guys, because I think that, you know, if you're in a similar situation where things, you're not sure how they're going to work out, just remember that you have more power in the situation than you can imagine, just by your thoughts and your belief system, you know? So, now that I've shared this story and like how it all kind of came to be and all that, I want to also give you guys, like I said, some practical tips, websites I've used, and just kind of what you can expect if you're also looking for a place, and things to avoid and all of that. So like I said, I had been living in Paris for 6 years, but for example, if you're somebody that's moving from the States or out of the country and it's your first time moving here, I would definitely recommend moving here first and getting an Airbnb, and I'll tell you why. The reason is, if you are looking online and you rent a place before you get here, you might end up getting some bad surprises, or it might be a scam. A lot of people scam by having you send them money online, and then you get to the place and it doesn't exist, you know? So I think it's always better to see a place in person. And kind of going along with that, never ever send money before signing the contract. You know, a lot of scammers will be like, you have to pay the money up front to hold the place, and that's just illegal. So it's something to look out for and not to do. You know, I kind of felt lucky in my situation, because as she is like a public figure, I had a bit more trust in her. But oftentimes when you are looking for a place, you can't really tell if somebody is trustworthy. So just always follow the laws as closely as possible, just to make sure that you're protecting yourself, you know? Next, I want to say to make sure that you act fast. If you're visiting a place and you really like it, don't wait or be wishy-washy. Like, if you really like it, then just go for it, and make sure that you say like, I really want this place, because, you know, if you wait a day, it could be gone, you know? So really be proactive, assertive, and kind of like I showed in my experience, try to find like a common ground with your landlord, or try to find things that you guys have in common. I think that people often forget like the human side of, you know, these kind of things, because you have to remember, like, your landlord is just human. And, you know, my landlord didn't explicitly say this, but I know that the old tenant was an art critic, you know, like, old tenant was an art critic. I'm an artist, so, you know, maybe she has a soft spot for the artists, or maybe, you know, she is just a little bit more understanding about our situations, because she is also an artistic type person. Like, I have friends who are, for example, Portuguese, and they found a place because they found a Portuguese landlord that wanted to help them out. So, you know, if you can find something like a common point with the landlord, it can definitely help your situation. Next, I want to go over le dossier, or your application file, and what you can expect to be asked for as far as documents are concerned. So you're going to be asked for your work contract, and your pay stubs. So even if you're freelance, you'll still have pay stubs if you declare your taxes and stuff in France. If you are freelance but you started your business in another country, like Jesus take the wheel, I don't know how that works. I think that you probably will have to switch your business over first, because otherwise you're not going to have any documents attesting to like you making money. But that alone, like as a freelancer, normally isn't enough. Like you need to have a co-signer. So if you are looking for a place and you don't have a French co-signer, and it really does have to be a French co-signer, it can't be like your parents in the US. And even if you yourself make a good salary, if you are freelance, it doesn't matter. Like you really do need that French co-signer. So if you need that and you don't have it, and you don't qualify for the service that I used called Visal, because either you're over 30 or you're not a student, there are other services and resources available. Like I know that there is this site called Guarantee Me, which is like a site that you like pay a little bit every year and they will be your co-signer. But as I haven't personally used that, I can't speak on whether or not it's good or not. But I would just say do your research and try to find like alternative solutions, because where there is a will, there is a way. Another thing that you're going to need is, if you're a student, your attestation de scolarité, which is like your document saying that you are actually a student, or you can use your student card. And I believe that's it. In my situation, those were the documents that I was asked for. Next, I wanted to just briefly talk about what you can expect to pay in Paris for an apartment in like different sizes. I don't know for like 2 bedrooms and above, because I've never like considered living in a place that large. But I know for like studios, a small studio is around like 500 to 600 a month, kind of depending on the area. The more central you are, the more expensive that it is. And I would say the areas that are the least expensive would be like the northeast, like the 18th, 19th, 20th. Still cool neighborhoods, but you know, the farther that you get away from the center, the less expensive that it's gonna be. And I would say like for a 1-bedroom, like a nice 1-bedroom, again depending on the area, you can pay between like $850 and like $1,100. And if you get a studio that is like as large as a 1-bedroom, you would probably pay like around the lower side of that, like $850, you know. But again, it can definitely vary on how nice the place is. But it's definitely not, for example, like New York price rents or anything like that. Like I think I was paying close to the same rent that I was paying when I lived in Florida, which is kind of funny because I always get comments from people like, how can you afford to live in Paris? It must be so expensive. And dude, it's really not that expensive. Like, I mean, it's not more expensive than what I was paying living in the US, and in some ways it's less expensive because I don't have a car payment. And me having shitty cars my whole life and always having to pay to repair my cars all the time, ended up racking up a lot of bills to go to the mechanic. So all of this to say is your dream life is possible, and not to have limiting beliefs like, oh, I could never do that, or that's just so impossible, like how could I move there, or oh, like my profile isn't good enough, I'll never be chosen. Like you never know. So like I said, your job isn't to figure out how it's gonna work. Just be really honest with yourself about what you want in this life, and then let destiny take care of the rest, you know? So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys are currently looking for a place in Paris, remember your perfect place is out there. And especially, you know, with everything that has gone on this year, a lot of people have moved out of Paris because, you know, they don't want to be living in the city with like confinement and stuff like that. So you might find your dream place easier than you thought. And in any case, I am rooting for you. I'm sending you good vibes, and I hope to see you in a future video. I love you and have a beautiful week. Bye.